Hello and a good day, dear participants. Today we discuss on reading comprehension and its meaning. This is a part of Module 3, Reading the Text and Reading Comprehension, Part 1. Let us begin by making you remember the 4 skills of language learning. What are the 4 skills, participants? The 4 skills are, I think you know, listening, reading, writing, and speaking. This is a discussion which will revolve around reading and specifically reading comprehension. So see, we begin again by recapitulating some old concepts which we know from our previous reading or our previous knowledge. So reading, you know, is a complex skill. Why is it a complex skill? Among all the skills, probably this is the most complex apart from writing. It's very demanding. Why? Because you see, the reader has to construct meaning with his or her prior knowledge to find out the meaning in the context of the text. And definitely you see, the material that is covered in the text has to be understood by the reader. You see, the meaning is also defined by the purpose of reading. Like say, if you are reading to get some information, like say simply how to run a washing machine, then you see you are going to pick up the most important information and you will choose something which will give you an idea and the best idea of how to run a washing machine. So you are actually going to read for that particular information, not for pleasure. Similarly, you see, reading will progress through stages. Like say, you'll have to select and choose a text. You'll have to pre-read. Then you'll have to go through the text and seek the information. You can scan. Okay. Similarly, you see, after reading, you will have to sort out the queries which you might have in your mind. And this is how it will develop. Remember, participants, reading does not mean only being confined to poetry, confined to novels, confined to specifically things related to literature. Reading could mean a map reading. Reading could mean the direction reading. So you see, reading could be of many types. Reading could mean a literature which is an instruction manual, as I was telling you, right? So, and you see, when you become teachers, you actually can motivate your students into reading these various kinds of texts. And by motivating them, you make reading a very, very meaningful activity. Let's move on. So you see, introducing the reading comprehension. What is basically reading comprehension? You see, reading comprehension is simply to say an ability to read through the text and to figure out, to cull out, to extract the meaning, exact meaning and the relevant meaning which is embedded in the text. And you see, reading comprehension is not only related to a particular and a specific discipline. Like say, if you say English, no, not that. Reading is basically, it spans across curriculums, across, say, a science student, per se, will need to be a very, very responsible reader, a reader who is able to concentrate like somebody who is in humanities or social sciences, right? So reading will span across the curriculum, right? Now, you see, Veeravaagu, as you see in the slide, he tries to define reading comprehension. I have highlighted certain points you see in red. What does Veeravaagu say? It's a thinking process. Definitely, you see, if you're not a thoughtful reader, then even if you read 10 times, you don't get much material out of it. Also, you see, while reading, the reader will select facts. Also, you see information. And you see the reader also determines the meanings which the author has intended to transmit. Now, please remember, participants, you see, unless you are going into high level of creative reading like discourse, which is necessary, like say, you are probably reading a theory, like say structuralism, like say post-structuralism, where you see you have to go beyond the meaning of the author. Otherwise, you see in your daily activities, reading is something where you need to understand what the author wants to tell you. Like say in a in a leaf, let's say, where, you are going for a hotel, trying to find a hotel somewhere. And the leaflet gives you some kind of information about the price, about the direction, about the facilities available in the hotel, okay, or the restaurant perhaps, okay. Then you see you have to actually read the literal meaning. Don't try to go beyond it, right? So at the real life level, you see reading tries to cull out meanings of the authorial intention, I would say, right? And definitely try to relate it to your previous knowledge. Like say, if you are going to Nepal, if you try to link it with your experience at Goa, maybe it could be a meaningful reading while reading through a leaflet. And definitely choose things to read, as has been highlighted over here, which is related to your own objectives. You see, if you choose something which is unrelated, like say if you choose somebody's blog when you are doing an academic activity, like writing a research paper, then the blog may not help you in your objectives. Now I go on with, and this is the last part of this particular discussion, where you see I am concentrating on the basic skills or the aspects of reading comprehension. This is by Frederick Davis, 1944. And you see, he begins with at least 9 to 10 skills, which are 9 skills to be precise, which are necessary for good reading and meaning making in reading. One is to get the word meanings. If you look at the following passage, you will see that you see this passage, in this passage, where you see the passage is simply, it's the idea of how you see we all get interested in our genealogy, or you see forefathers, what our forefathers were, tracing our roots, and how you see how our ancestry gives us a sense of, history too. And you see, I've chosen this topic to give you an idea. There are 3 highlighted terms. You see genealogy, ancestral, and tapestry, actually, which gives you that if you don't understand the meanings of these words, then you see you may not get the meaning of this passage. Genealogy, as I told you, is tracing your roots, your ancestors. Ancestral definitely is your forefathers, what belongs to your forefathers, like your forefathers' home. The heirloom, like your grandmother's necklace. Tapestry is basically something like a curtain, right? So, an in-depth family history is a tapestry. That would mean, it is a cover, it is an all-encompassing idea, right? Going by, you see, the next skill which is required is sometimes you see, don't worry participants if you don't get those particular meanings. Fine, it's okay. Reading can also go ahead if you understand at least the words in the context. Sometimes we guess, we are able to read when you see we are able to proceed by guessing the word left, the word right, and we get a general idea of the passage, right? Now, I have highlighted these words. Look at this. We mend your soul. We die for you too. We will heal you. These are basically homonyms, as you know. And you see, they also can be spelled in a different manner. Look at these and you see, if you make it as S-O-U-L, then we mend your soul. We die, D-I-E. If I transform this into D-I-E, then what happens? You see, we die for you. Okay, and we will heal you, H-E-A-L, if I make this. So what do you think, learners or participants, what domain is this? Who can be using these words, playing on these words? In this context, definitely, it could be, person, who mends our shoes, okay? So, soul and dye, he can paint your boots, okay? He can mend the heel of your shoe, right? So, in the context, words often change. If you change the meanings, as I was telling you, if you go to a doctor or if you go to a priest, okay, they will mend your SOUL. They can die for you, in the sense of dedication. They can also heal your mind and your body, right? So, sometimes reading will need a kind of, you can say, conscientious effort to understand the context. The third skill which is required is to follow the cohesive devices and to follow the logical development of a passage. It can be the cause and effect. It can be a passage can deal with a problem, say why are the rains scanty a particular year. Nowadays you see the heat wave is on, especially in Bengal. And you see why is there a heat wave? In spite of that, in spite of there being so much of evaporation because of the heat wave, why aren't rains coming? And what could be the solution to that? Is it the global warming? There could be a comparison and a contrast, like say Shakespeare and Marlowe in case of literature. There could be a chronology, like say in the Gupta period in history, which war happened, what was the effect. There could be also descriptive text structure. That would mean, description, say how to make tea, and there could be description of that, okay, or a description of a particular picture, like Saint Swinburne's poetry, right? So these could be, so you have to follow the kind of passage it is, okay? As we move on, you see the other skills required for successful reading is to identify the main idea. Look at the passage which I have chosen for you. You see, the passage is basically the impact of advertisement in our lives, okay? And you see, the lines underlined, like the first line, advertising affects our lives every day. And the last line, which is a repetition of the first line, no one aspect of Indian life is untouched by advertising. These are actually the main idea of this particular passage. The rest of it is basically, you see, an amplification of how you see advertising is intruding in our lives. I think you all will be able to read it from this particular slide. So you must be able to identify what is the main idea. Otherwise, you see, you can get lost in these maze of words, okay? And you might think that everything is very important, right? Now, I choose this poem particularly as a kind of, you can say, a method where I show you an example and I take you to the rest of the skills required. You see, by this time you're already probably reading when you're watching this video that you see this is a small poem by Sarojini Naidu, popular poem who wrote about the Indian themes and the Indian scenario, who is talking about the weavers and the things that the weavers weave during the time of nationalism of India, right? And it was a time when you see the kings and the queens dealt with the poor, right? And this is a passage. I am not going to give you the meaning of the passage. My exact objective over here is that you get to know how do you read this. So what are the skills required, or how do you move through this? Okay, where you are looking at Sarojini Naidu's rendition of what the weavers do, what the weavers weave, right? And how can you connect this to your reading? So the next skill is that you see, if you go on to connecting the skills with that particular passage, which I used as an example. So you see, you might be asked, or you can yourself ask, you see, specific text-based questions, like say, what kind of garments do the weavers weave? The other, the moment you go to the specific text-based question, what kind of garments, you see, the weavers weave bright garments, the weavers weave marriage veils of a queen, the weavers weave, you see, a dead man's funeral shroud, right? Text-based questions with paraphrase could be briefly describe the marriage veil of a queen. So the marriage veil of a queen, you see, it's colorful, like the plumes of a peacock, purple and green, right? Ultimately, you see, a meaningful textual reading could be drawing inferences. That would mean conclusion. You make meaning, okay, and interpret out of the content. What do you think? This question could be related to the poem. What do you think the different kind of garments woven by the weavers tell about human life? It's actually that if you go back to the poem, the human life, you see, is something, it talks about the queen, it talks about the dead man, it talks about also the newborn child. So it's a kind of a medley which we'll be talking about. Finally, you could identify the literary devices as to what could be, you find out a line and you say, what could be the literary device in this? This is a simile. What could be the author's purpose? So these are the skills which are required, the nice skills which I am talking about. So participants, finally, to sum up, in this particular discussion, reading comprehension, as you see, would mean thinking, selecting ideas, determining meaning, relating them, and relate to one's own learning objectives. What do you want to learn? And as I showed you, reading comprehension has 9 aspects. I'm not repeating, but you can see on the slide, we have discussed these 9 aspects. And once again, thank you for listening to me.